Kim Jong-un definitely came home to North Korea to accolades. That's one of the benefits, I guess, of being a dictator is that that's about all you're going to get when you come home. But certainly he had the images that he wanted and everything else that solidified his power. And he also came back with some very, very tangible material gains. One being that Donald Trump, at least as of, this week, called off the largest war games in the world that are not just about North Korea. That's part of it, but it's about protecting a broad swath of our allies in that region. Let's put aside the merits of canceling those war games. I tend to believe that the less militarization we have, the better. But let's instead focus on the question of why Donald Trump would do this. Why would he give away something, such a massive chit to Un in return for nothing? I mean, we can also, I think it's been universally agreed that Kim Jong-un gave him nothing. There was no benchmarks or commitments or watersheds or timetables. There was just a broad general thing of like, yeah, we're going to try and we'll see what happens. And you wrote a piece in Salon that, and I can come up with all sorts of wild theories about why Donald Trump did this, psychological ones where he had been getting, advisors who had been infiltrated by Russians, to place this in his idea, maybe that he thinks he's going to get a hotel. But you point out in your Salon piece, much simpler answer.
Well, yeah, the Russian thing is very interesting. I hadn't known this before when I was watching it all those hours, that that Vladimir Putin had apparently, this was reported back in January, and I think it must have been at that meeting in Hamburg where Trump made the, let's get together sign to Putin and had the little quiet meeting at the dinner. Putin had told him, one thing you might do with North Korea is suspend all of your military exercises, which they consider to be very provocative. And apparently Trump liked that idea and, in fact, ended up sort of being talked out of it early on. And remember, too, that it was also reported after that Trump had, around the Olympics in South Korea, had said he wanted to withdraw all troops immediately from South Korea and had to be talked down from that one by General Kelly, who said, no, really you don't want to do that. So this has been in his head for a while. Now, why he thinks this, he claims it's because he's worried about money, that it's too expensive. This is at the same time, of course, that he's boosting the military budget beyond anybody's wildest dreams for reasons that we can't understand, since he seems to be so concerned about military spending in this situation. I don't know that Trump has a rational reason, except that, again, going back, I think he really wants to please people in these situations. I think he is, a very confrontational person from a distance, a real ass from a distance, and I think up close and personal, I think he's very, very much a marshmallow. He wanted to give him something, and so he did. Now, this is a very important thing, and it's not just because, Russia may or may not have their own reasons for wanting to do this. I know that on Rachel Maddow last night she talked about an 11-mile border that they have, and that, Vladimir Putin is trying to, get involved in this whole thing for reasons of his own. But really, this is about, regional instability in Asia, and how all this is going to play out. And it mostly has to do with China as much as it has to do with North Korea.
Right.
And Trump is so far in over his head on this. And, I'm no expert either. I'm not pretending that I know, I can read Xi Jinping's mind or that I know what all the chess pieces are here. But I can guarantee you that Donald Trump doesn't know and doesn't want to know. He is absolutely he's convinced of, he has a certain set of erroneous ideas about how the world works, and that is what he's putting into play here, and I don't think anybody can talk him out of it. So that whole thing of him going in there, and they did, I mean, basically the agreement that they got, to the extent it's even an agreement, is very, very shallow. It is, and in fact, it's way, way less comprehensive than any of the agreements going back to 1994 are.
With North Korea,
it is nothing.
Right.
It's nothing. And even more interesting, and I think this is going to start to play out as time goes on here, is that they had this meeting between the two of them that there was no notes taken and no recording of what was said. Both of them are, inveterate liars. Both Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump are liars. We can in no way assume that either one of them are telling the truth about what went on in that meeting. We will never know what each of them said. So this presents a very big conundrum. And in fact, it's playing itself out in the fact that North Korean state media is now saying that Trump agreed to end the sanctions. Now, Trump did not say that he would end the sanctions. He said they would have to, quote, denuke, which is his new word for it, denuke, before he would lift those sanctions. They're saying he agreed to lift the sanctions. And in fact, their whole statement about the summit was that it was going to be a step-by-step process in which the U.S. was going to be leading the way with concessions, right, at which point North Korea would then follow with their concessions, all of which is at, total contrast to anything that the U.S. understood to be coming out of it, except for those military exercises. So we don't have any idea. Each one of them is saying whatever they want to say. We will never know. And since neither of them are trustworthy, I mean, I wouldn't have thought that, even about George W. Bush, if he'd have been the guy who did it. I wouldn't think he'd come out and just lie, blatantly, the way that I assume Trump is.
I don't think Donald Trump went into this with a notion of, I've got to strike, I've got to get a peace deal. I think Donald Trump went into this as, I've got to appear to have gotten a peace deal.
Right.
To me, the guiding principle is what he exposed in that conversation with Mexican President Nietes. This is where he said, listen, you don't need to pay for the wall, but I need you to say you're going to pay for the wall, because it's really important to my people. That, to me, I think is what is Donald Trump's organizing principle. And that is, I need to be able to project that I got something done. It doesn't matter if I got something done. In fact, if getting something done stands in the way of me projecting that I get something done, I don't even want to get that done. Right? Like this is like, I can either pull the permits and line up the financing for a building, but that's going to take time. It's going to slow things down. Or I can go out, I can do a ribbon cutting, I can have everybody there with a gold shovel, we can dig a couple of scoops, and then 2 or 3 years from now, it doesn't matter what happens. Nothing happens, it's okay. Nobody's going to remember. But today, it's going to look like I'm launching a new building. And I can't help but think that was his perspective.
I think that's his perspective on everything, Sam.
I agree.
He really hit the nail on the head. He lives in the moment. It's all about winning today. And that is what it's about for him.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We got more to talk about, because we got to look at what happens next. It's one thing, Donald Trump may live in the moment, but the rest of us, we hopefully will be living a lot longer than that. We got to take a quick break. I'll be right back with the great Heather Parton.